Hi, my name's Adam Radford. I'm a Distinguished Systems Engineer at Cisco, and the purpose of this demonstration is to take you through a time of day based policy that we're going to use or implement using the Intelligent WAN or IWAN app APIs. So time of day based policy is not something that we support natively in the application. So for example, if you can imagine you were a retailer that had a store environment that was connected to your headquarters, you may want to choose a policy that, for example, made backup traffic a business critical application after hours or on weekends. So this is just an example of how you could use the policy APIs to interact with the APIC-EM and allow you to do something that you can't normally do in the controller via APIs. If I come across, and I'm going to assume that you've seen the video that I've done around the demonstration of the IWAN app on APIC-EM. So essentially what we do in terms of policy is we have categories of applications, so voice and video, consumer streaming, backup, etc. Those categories are then what is used for policy. There is a couple of components to policy. The first one is the relevance of the application. And that's really very simple. And essentially, the application relevance or application category relevance is really just the way that we implement quads. So under the covers, there's a bunch of complexity around policy maps, class maps, etc. But essentially, all we expose to you in the UI and in the policy model is a choice of whether this application category is business relevant or not. So in this particular case, you can see that voice and video is business relevant and backup and storage isn't. The other thing that we do is we give you the ability to define a path or a path preference and turn on application performance monitoring. So I can select a primary path and a secondary path, and I can also change those. If I wanted to change the allocation of these, I could do this. I could just drag and drop, and that change would be made. So I could drag the voice and video class across or category across to the business irrelevant traffic if I wanted to. That won't happen until I apply the changes, but it's a very simple process in terms of making that change. Now what I wanted to show you how to do is to do all of this via the API. So if I go into Postman, the first thing I need to do, and if you've seen the earlier tutorials, everything in APIC-EM revolves around a ticket. So I'm going to log into my controller in my lab, and I'm going to send it the username and password. And unfortunately, I've used variables for these, so you can't actually tell what they are. And what I'm going to get back is a service ticket. So this service ticket is something that I need to collect, because every request that I make from now on will require a header that has an XAuth token name and a value which happens to be that ticket. In this particular case, I'm going to ask for all of the policies that are defined on the controller. And I'm going to press send. And guess what? Backup and storage is the first one on the list. So this is getting all of the policies. There'll be a policy for all of the application categories that you saw. And what I notice here is that the ID of this resource, and we've spoken about universally unique identifiers in the past, that's the ID for this particular policy. Now, if I wanted to go one step further, I could use that ID to make a request for that policy, and that would just give me a single entry rather than a list, but that would just contain all of the information about that particular policy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to grab a copy of that, and I'm going to then go in and make a put request to the controller. So the first thing that I need to do is to put it in square brackets, because what I can do is I can update multiple policies at the same time. In this particular example, I'm only going to do one, but if I wanted to, I could add extra policies or do multiple policies at the same time. I'm just going to remove some of the attributes that I don't need. Need to keep the name and the ID. You can see here the resource that I'm applying the policy to is a category of applications called backup and storage. And the action that I'm going to perform on the scope of IWAN, which is my IWAN environment, so this will happen across multiple stores, is to set the relevance level of those applications to business irrelevant. Now that's the current behavior. What I want to do is I want to change that to business relevant. Just before I do, if I wanted to keep this particular policy, because if I change it from business irrelevant to business relevant, I'm likely to want to change it back. And what I'm going to do is, if I click on Generate Code here, you'll see that one of the nice features of Postman is the ability to generate code snippets automatically. So in this particular case, it's going to use Python requests. There are lots of other options that you have, and you can see here a very simple example of a piece of Python code that would actually implement the change that I wanted to. So I could copy that to my clipboard, I could save that, and I'd have a way of making this traffic business irrelevant. Now, obviously, if you look at what I'm going to do now, I'm going to make this traffic business relevant. And if you also think about what happened there, if I was to generate code here, everything would be the same except for this parameter, which is the relevance level. So I'm assuming that you probably won't save multiple scripts. What you'll do is you'll refactor this, turn this into a module, pass a parameter that says whether it should be business relevant or not. And luckily I just checked that because I noticed that I had misspelt business relevant, so that was likely to cause some problems. So now that's really all I need to do. I'm going to press send that off to the controller. And as we've spoken about before several times, everything that happens on the controller is asynchronous. You notice that I got a 202 accepted back here. And what that means is I get a task back. And what I'm going to do now is to look at the the contents of that task to see how successful that task has been. So you can see here, it's a start time, it's an end time. Is error is false, which is great news. So that means that my task should have been successful. Just going to go back to my controller now. And if I was to refresh this page, I should find that backup and storage has in fact moved from the business irrelevant relevance level to the business relevant level. And lo and behold, it has moved back. You notice here that video and storage is also back here in business relevant, and the reason for that was that even though I had dragged and dropped it across to the business irrelevant column, or the business irrelevant category, I hadn't actually applied the change, so that change didn't go ahead. So that's a very simple example of how we can make a policy-based change. It's very easy to save that script away. Just in summary, the steps that I went through, I got a ticket from the controller, was the first thing that I needed to do. I then got a list of all of the policies that came back from the controller. I got explicitly the policy that I was interested in, which was the one for backup and storage. Now, I probably didn't need to do that, but I just did it for the sake of completeness. I then did a put, which updates the existing policy with just one change. So the relevance level, instead of being business irrelevant, was business relevant. And then I checked the task just to make sure that that change had been successful. And then finally, I went to the controller to validate that it had been changed in the UI. Now, I could have also rerun this query to make sure that it had been changed in the API, but I just wanted to show you how it had been reflected in the user interface. So I hope that's been useful. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy doing this in your own lab with your own APIC-EM controller. Thank you.